Welcome to Mysterium, where we taste the wonder and mystery of all of this. What is this? If we are seeking to understand ourselves and reality, could we wear lenses of perception that are reflective of the fundamental characteristics of reality to guide us in this aim? Perhaps by aligning our perceptions with the nature of reality, we can experience reality for what it is. If we live with an aligned understanding of ourselves and reality, what kind of life will that unfold? I don't know, but I feel that it'll be worthwhile for me to find out. We'll see what happens. In this video series, we'll explore a lens of perception from Tom Cheetham's book, Imaginal Love, which seems to have loosened my attachment to concepts and opened my doors of perception to the boundlessness and potential of reality. This video is part 1 of a series on imaginal perception. Here I'll discuss the fundamental characteristics of reality that we'll be considering. In the next video, we'll look into how imaginal perception is fitting for understanding such a reality. First, let's have a look at what seems to be the default view of reality based on our everyday perception and habits of language. When we look at and interact with the physical world, people, life, and things really do seem entirely separate from us and everything else. You are the captain of your ship. Your actions and will are what determines your course. In language, a person, place, or thing is put into a clearly defined boundary, and there's a sense that they are stable and independent, a noun in contrast to a verb. It doesn't seem to be part of common knowledge that most of what we name as nouns actually belong to a web of relationships, are inherently active, and are dynamic processes. This habit of thinking naturally shapes the mind to view reality as composed of static, separate, and distinct entities. Imagine billiard balls that bounce around and collide into one another. This view of reality is obvious to the senses and pays attention to parts, separation, and stability. Let's now dive into what appears to be a more accurate view of reality. Everything flows. Everything is constantly changing and in process. Our hearts and lungs are continuously contracting and expanding. Our 60 trillion cells are carrying out their lives and replacing themselves throughout our lifetimes. Seasons change along with the activities of life. The moon orbits Earth, Earth orbits the Sun, and the Sun orbits the center of the Milky Way. Stars maintain their form through simultaneous contraction by gravity and expansion by nuclear fusion. Even at the smallest scale that we know of, the quantum, in conditions where we had previously expected there to be no energy, that is in a vacuum in which space is empty, and at absolute zero in which there is no thermal energy, there's still quantum energy fluctuating and dancing along. Experimental evidence has shown that these quantum fluctuations in supposedly empty space can, under certain conditions, be converted into detectable particles of light. What appears to be absence of activity is in fact full of activity. Reality is fundamentally active. Everything exists because of active processes at all scales, from the quantum to the cosmos. As an aside, maybe it's not that something arose from nothing, but rather something arose from potentiality. Everything also flows in that everything is in some way interconnected. Nothing is completely separated and isolated from everything else. Boundaries are permeable and in some ways boundless. This is what our best physics of the smallest scale tells us. In our scientific search to reduce reality into increasingly smaller parts, we stumbled upon reality behaving as a field, where particles, or distinctions, are considered excitations of a field. Similar to how patterns in water can form waves and whirlpools. A whirlpool emerges from the interactions of water within the ocean and is a part of the whole ocean. It's a process unfolding within the greater whole that it's embedded within. It seems that there's a fertile ground of relational potentiality that is the origin of every distinction. In other words, every single thing is really a pattern of converging relations. Relations are nested and interwoven. They are countless, and most of them are probably unknown. I'll be naming only an infinitesimal fraction of known relations in my examples. My being traces through our ancestors, other living beings, our creations, Mother Earth, the asteroid that killed off the dinosaurs, the stars, and beyond. The air that we breathe and all the matter that we see can be traced to the birth and death of stars. As you know, without the sun, there'd be no energy for all of life's present and interconnected activities. Without stars having exploded and scattered their elements such as oxygen, carbon, calcium, silicon, and iron, much else wouldn't exist besides stars. Consciousness, as we know it, wouldn't exist. The same applies to our sense of individuality. Beyond our connection to the natural world, we are heavily influenced by other humans, and especially their creations. Whether that be clothes, foods, games, entertainment, art, music, dance, martial arts, technologies, or ideas. Creativity is the ability to generate new ideas, relationships, or manifestations, and the phenomenal world is the substrate that creativity draws from. Without the creativity of our ancestors and past and present fellow humans, we wouldn't be who we are today with our particular way of seeing and relating to ourselves and the world. Everything exists, especially at greater levels of complexity, because of fundamental interconnectedness. I'm pointing towards a kind of reality that is fundamentally relational, in which all arises from a vortex of manifold processes unfolding. When you point to one distinction, you are unknowingly pointing to the unimaginable web of interconnections that one distinction is embedded within. In pulling out one distinction, tendrils of connections trail all around, along with the whole of reality. Your particular existence is possible because of the fundamental forces of nature, your ancestors, your 60 trillion cells, your upbringing, your community, other living beings, the history of humanity, Mother Earth, the moon, the sun, because of all of the processes that have unfolded and continue unfolding. And each of these distinctions has their own web of relations that they are dependent upon. Ubuntu philosophy says, "I am because you are," highlighting that relations are what make us a person. I'd like to expand on this and put it in my own words. I am a nexus of continuously unfolding interrelations. By that I mean, I am because of interconnectedness and interdependence. I am because of both the contractions and expansions of my heart and lungs and the stars. Everything has an invisible umbilical cord. This view of reality is discernible to an imagination working with the senses and pays attention to wholes, relations, and animacy. There are invisible threads weaving together the tapestry of reality. These threads may not be self-evident to the eyes, but they are visible to the inner eye that imagines and allows us to feel what is true beyond mere appearances. Only through our imagination can we see beyond physical separation and differences in appearances to feel into our interconnectedness. Form and distinction certainly exist. What I want to bring attention to is that those distinct forms are embedded within a greater whole and emerge from interconnectedness, like the patterns that can be differentiated within a tapestry. All is of form and formlessness, particulars and interrelations, actualizations and potentialities. Reality encompasses both either or and both parts and wholes, distinctions and relations, with a fundamental leaning towards both and, as demonstrated by the trajectory of increasing complexity, greater functional wholes since the beginning of time. This points to non-duality, how things are conceptually distinct, but in reality are one. I digress. That's the next lens for another video. I hope I've shown that it's at least plausible that reality is not static, not made up of completely isolated parts, and not accurately perceived by our senses alone. Rather, reality is dynamic and in process, deeply relational, and more comprehensible to our imagination in conjunction with our senses. If you accept the nature of reality that I've presented, then the first habit of language and mind that's worth questioning is reality made of nouns or verbs, static and isolated things, or processes unfolding? In the next video, we'll explore imaginal perception. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.